What we know for sure is the FBI report did not corroborate any of the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. And the second thing we know for sure is that there's no way anything we did would satisfy the Democrats.
Now that the senators have seen the FBI report, Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation process is coming to a close. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. The FBI investigation focused on sexual assault allegations against the judge from more than 30 years ago. Now, with the full Senate preparing to vote, all eyes are on a handful of key players who could make or break Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court.
That's right. The tension's high on Capitol Hill, where the FBI report is guarded in a secure room. There, each senator gets 1 hour to review. There is only one copy.
That's right, Jenna. The White House is confident that upon examination, there's no reason to vote no on Judge Kavanaugh. Ben Kennedy reports.
The FBI report digs back more than 30 years into Judge Kavanaugh's life. It's during that time in high school, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford says Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her, a claim he denies.
So none of these last-minute allegations have been corroborated, as is confirmed by the 7th and latest FBI investigation.
Dr. Ford's lawyers push back on that conclusion, criticizing the FBI for neither investigating their client nor Kavanaugh, releasing a statement saying those directing the FBI investigation were not interested in seeking the truth.
It looks to be a product of an incomplete investigation that was limited, perhaps by the White House.
Anybody that pushes back on the fact that Dr. Ford wasn't given ample opportunity to make her case and state her case has been living in a cave.
The decision to confirm Judge Kavanaugh comes down to a handful of lawmakers, Republican Senators Murkowski, Collins, and Flake, along with Democratic Senators Manchin and Heitkamp, who could vote either way.
I'm undecided. I'm truly undecided.
Senators that are kind of wavering right now, what is his message to them?
It's to vote and confirm Judge Kavanaugh. I think it's pretty simple.
President Trump took to Twitter to defend his nominee, saying this is now the 7th time the FBI has investigated Judge Kavanaugh. If we made it 100, it would still not be good enough for the obstructionist Democrats.
Now, the full Senate vote to confirm Kavanaugh may take place as early as Friday. In the meantime, some senators are still waiting their turn to see the report.
Well, with a lack of evidence to corroborate the assault allegations, a majority of Americans think Kavanaugh should be confirmed to the Supreme Court. That's according to a Harvard Capps Harris poll from over the weekend. It shows 60% believe Kavanaugh should be confirmed if the allegations aren't corroborated.
Well, Abigail Robertson joins us now from Capitol Hill. Abby, what are senators saying now that the FBI investigation is done?
Well, Republicans are saying that the FBI report shows that none of the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh are corroborated, so they're ready to vote. While Democrats say that the investigation didn't go far enough, so they still have a lot of questions and are accusing the Republicans of constraining the FBI in their investigation. Now, here's some video clips from what both sides are saying.
The main thing for me is that you need to go to the FBI and you need to ask them, did they feel like they were able to do their job without interference? And I think the answer is yes. They interviewed over 150 people have been interviewed throughout the course of Brett Kavanaugh's life. To those who suggest he had a problem like this from prior interviews, no evidence of that. That's all manufactured. The senators who requested the supplemental FBI background check got what they requested, and I am ready to vote.
We Democrats had many fears that this would be an all too limited process that would constrain the FBI from getting the facts. Having received a thorough briefing a few minutes ago, our fears have been realized.
Now, Republican senators just held a press conference where they told reporters that they did not tell the FBI whom to speak with or who not to speak with, that they let them decide and gave them free rein over who they wanted to talk to. Now, some Democrats have called for this report to be released publicly and have claimed that Republicans might be hiding something by not doing so. But Chairman Chuck Grassley also addressed this allegation and said that Republican senators don't actually have the power to release the report, but added that the White House might be able to.
Yeah, Abigail, of those Republican senators who are still kind of on the fence, Flake, Collins, and Murkowski, what are you hearing about them? How might they vote?
Well, so far, we know that at one point today, the three of them were actually in the room together reviewing the document, and that Susan Collins has said it appears to be a very thorough investigation, and Senator Flake said that there's no corroboration for Ford's claims in the FBI report. Now, Flake has gone back to the room more than once to take a look at this document, but we don't know for sure yet how any of them will vote, and we're also, we now know that Senator Heitkamp is a no, but we're still waiting to see how Senator Joe Manchin might vote.
Abigail Robertson reporting live on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
And we are joined now by GOP National Spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and CBN News political analyst David Brody. Both of you, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Kayleigh, David, this first question is for both of you. Who are the winners and the losers in all of this now that the FBI investigation is completed? And why don't we do ladies first?
Sure. I don't think there are any winners. This was a very serious, horrific allegation that was charged, and we saw a man whose reputation was smeared before the entirety of the nation. I don't think there are any winners. You know, if there is a winner, perhaps it's the fact that finally Judge Kavanaugh can have his name cleared and can have some sort of personal peace, if that's ever possible and achievable in his life again, after having to explain this to his daughters, to the nation, and Dr. Ford as well, what she went through. That there are no winners here, but I'm excited to see Judge Kavanaugh hopefully become Justice Kavanaugh and at least have that moment of peace.
I agree with Kayleigh on the winners. I can tell you who's one of the losers here, Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she looks really, really bad here. The fact that she held this, and I know she's talking about noble intentions as to why she held it, but look, she held it. And it really looks bad in the Democrats' dirty tactics playbook. And it clearly has motivated GOP enthusiasm. I mean, we're going to see that in the polls. We started to see that already in the polls. And so, look, I mean, you know, I think there's no doubt she's the loser here. I don't call her a loser, but she's a loser in the process. And, you know, maybe the Republicans, I don't know, Congressman, can't you dedicate a post office? They should dedicate a post office to Dianne Feinstein, and the mail can be delivered 2 months late. I mean, it could be something like that.
David, you alluded to it. Kayleigh, there's new polling that shows a real enthusiasm among GOP voters because of Brett Kavanaugh. What do you make of it?
There's no doubt, you know, if there's anything that excites Republican voters, it's the Supreme Court. We saw it in 2016. 1 in 5 voters voted based on the Supreme Court, and of those, 56% voted for President Trump. So it is a motivating issue for our voters. But what's interesting here in particular, we're seeing the 2016 effect play again. A Pew poll showed a few months ago, 1 month ago, I should say, a 12-point gap, Democrats ahead of Republicans. That has narrowed to just 2 in the wake of the post-Kavanaugh revelations and confirmation process.
You know, if Kavanaugh is confirmed, Kayleigh, is there concern that Republicans might shrink back a little bit, might relax, and not turn out at the polls in November?
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is one of the problems we were seeing in our polling is that our voters were not seeing the stakes of the election as clearly as they saw it in 2016. After 8 years of Obama, they knew the stakes of a liberal presidency, but they had kind of forgotten and sunk into a posture of complacency. And I think that this has woken up our base in a very powerful way that they will not forget. They see that the new standard trying to be put forward is guilty until proven innocent. It's something that I think will stay with them to November.
David, let's talk a little bit about media coverage. I'm surprised you didn't list them in the losers of all this this playing out, but
there's still time.
There's still time. Clearly, Kavanaugh hasn't gotten a fair shake per his supporters by Democrats, but what's the role that the media played in all of this?
Well, it's been pretty pathetic. I mean, quite frankly. I mean, this whole this white male outrage that they're now on, and you know, it's funny because the Democrats have talking points, and all of a sudden, oh, look at that! It's in the New York Times, it's in the Washington Post. It's like a big, you know, cauldron of liberalism, all kind of wrapped into one. It's fascinating to see. It's like we always hear about the Gang of 500, and we hear about the latte sipping crowd in the Washington D.C. New York Acela corridor. It's all on display here. I mean, it's like they get together and get their talking points together. and they're ready for the day. So I think it's been extremely frustrating, obviously, if you're a conservative, for sure. But I also think there's a disconnect. You know, this New York Times, above the fold crowd, the Washington Post, you know, that the liberal intelligentsia of the world, they all think they're right, and they can't believe that Donald Trump, you know, can get elected, and the deplorables, you know, what are they talking about? And then the deplorables are kind of up here with Donald Trump. They understand exactly what he's saying. They understand exactly what he means, even though he might not say it as eloquently as he might, as other presidents may. And so the media never gets it. There's a total disconnect, and they've been trying to figure it out time and time again. I'll just say one last thing, is that the more the media gangs up on Donald Trump, the worse it gets for them and the better it gets for Donald Trump.
Yeah, the more his support grows.
For sure.
Kayleigh, do you think Democrats here have overplayed their hand?
Oh, there's no denying it. You know, when you talked about Dianne Feinstein being the person who lost in this process, you're exactly right. And I like to compare how the two parties handled these things. The Republican Party, I'm very proud of our party. We allowed Dr. Ford to have her day to testify. We had the FBI investigation, let that play out, stalled the entire process for 2 weeks. And Dianne Feinstein sat on this allegation for 2 months, conveniently leaking it out just days before the vote. And not only that, you know, coming up with excuse after excuse. There are not enough documents, the Mueller probe now, and then finally using sexual assault as a pawn, essentially, in this political game. There's no doubt that Democrats lost. It's a serious matter, one that's plagued many women in this country, and it should not be politicized or used for political purposes.
Well, and just real quick to piggyback on that, the Democrats miscalculated here. They thought that in the Me Too movement, plus with the Republicans' traditional history of caving under pressure, that they would wilt. They didn't this time. Why? Look, I'm not going to say it's about Donald Trump, but in the Donald Trump era, he has emboldened a lot of folks and given them a little bit more chutzpah, as we used to say, growing up in the Jewish faith, to kind of get out there. And I believe that he's given them cover, these GOP senators, to a degree. And plus, Trump is channeling an angry electorate. And so you put the angry electorate with an angry president who's frustrated, and you're going to get more backbone by these Republicans. I don't think the Democrats were counting on that.
That's right, and I would also add just the evangelical community in particular and the Catholic community turned out in overwhelming numbers for President Trump. Right. That was because of the Supreme Court. That is because Neil Gorsuch, because they wanted someone in the mold of Neil Gorsuch to take that spot, to take this Scalia's seat, and those same motivating factors for those communities are at play here. So if Democrats didn't learn in 2016 what motivates evangelical and Catholic voters is the Supreme Court, it appears they didn't learn that lesson because it's going to motivate them in 2018.
Yeah. Kayleigh McEnany, David Brody, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And joining us now is Carrie Severino. She's Chief Counsel and Policy Director at the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, the Judicial Crisis Network is a big supporter of Kavanaugh's confirmation. Now that the investigation is all said and done, do you think he'll be confirmed?
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen everyone coming out of this, reading the FBI background check. Democrat and Republican agrees there's nothing new there. And that's what we've been saying a long time. Look, the Senate Judiciary Committee has already interviewed all the relevant witnesses. Now, the FBI actually interviewed a few additional people even, but there's still no evidence and no corroboration of any of these allegations. In fact, several of them have started to fall apart even more in the days since they were made. So I think right now it's time to stop the delay tactics. Let's just move on. We're going to have a vote probably on Saturday, it looks like. And I'm looking forward to Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation.
Carrie, do you think the investigation at all moves the dial on some of the key senators, especially the red state senators who were thinking maybe this might be an out not to vote for him? Do you think this will sway them to vote for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everyone from the Republicans like Flake or Collins and Murkowski to the red state Democrats. I mean, Senators Manchin and Heitkamp, when you look at, we've done polling in their states, and Judge Kavanaugh is overwhelmingly popular, like 58 to 28% want him confirmed in West Virginia, or 56 to 26 in North Dakota. So having this now, where anyone who was saying, yeah, but I wish I knew what the FBI would have, if they would have come up with anything, now we know. There isn't anything new out there to be found, and the witnesses who spoke to the Judiciary Committee before, their stories are the same. Not surprising, it's the same penalty of felony if you lie to either the FBI or the Judiciary Committee. But that, I think, will give a few of these senators an added measure of comfort and confidence with the process.
Some have said, even with the FBI investigation seeming to side with Kavanaugh, he's not the right person for the court because of the temperament that he displayed in his testimony last week. Do you believe that his testimony, it was forceful, but do you believe that it perhaps leaves a cloud over his reputation as an independent jurist?
No, not at all. What we saw there was a man whose entire life has been upended. His decades-long, respectful reputation of public service, really is one of the most widely respected federal judges out there across the aisles, was being dragged through the mud with allegations that, as we've now seen again and again, are simply uncorroborated, totally no evidence there. So I can understand, certainly, his frustration with that process. But for anyone who says, well, he was too upset about this particular issue, oh, well, sure, but this isn't any issue involving himself, of course. He would be recused from on the bench. So I know that he's able to step back as a judge. So obviously he feels very strongly about this topic, but that's not surprising because it deals so closely with him. When it comes to other cases, he's the kind of person who's shown for a dozen years that he knows how to step away from the partisan fray. I wish the Senate Democrats could do the same.
Carrie Severino with the Judicial Crisis Network, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be here.
Why the Vice President is speaking out against China.
Vice President Mike Pence is accusing the Chinese government of orchestrating an aggressive military, economic, and political campaign inside the United States.
That's right, Jenna. And their goal, expanding Chinese influence across America.
CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales has the story. Eric?
Yeah, guys, this is a very serious issue here. Today's speech by the Vice President turned into a surprising show of force. And he played prosecutor today, giving example after example of Chinese meddling in the U.S. election. And Pence says that effort pales in comparison to what China is doing, and the American people need to know it.
To put it bluntly, President Trump's leadership is working, and China wants a different American president.
Going beyond the midterms and other efforts, Vice President Mike Pence accused China of directly undermining President Donald Trump after the administration has talked tough and taken action against specific Chinese trade, economic, and foreign policies.
Our intelligence community says that China is targeting U.S. state and local governments and officials to exploit any divisions between federal and local levels on policy. It's using wedge issues like trade tariffs to advance Beijing's political influence.
President Trump signed an executive order back in September authorizing sanctions against Chinese hackers involved in election interference. Since then, the vice president says China has targeted more than 80% of the U.S. counties won by Trump in the 2016 election and is now trying to turn those voters against him in 2020.
The American people will not be swayed, and we will continue to stand strong for our security and our economy.
Pence also warned American businesses to be vigilant against Chinese efforts to leverage access to their markets and technology.
Google should immediately end development of the Dragonfly app that will strengthen the Communist Party's censorship and compromise the privacy of Chinese customers.
It is important to note that while Google maintains it is not close to launching a search product in China, it's been reported that several employees have resigned over the issue. Pence ended his speech stating America will not be intimidated and we will not stand down.
Strong words. Eric, what is the United States doing about military intimidation?
Yeah, that is a very, very big issue there. It's the vice president actually specifically also protested Beijing's military construction in the South China Sea, as well as the Chinese efforts to intercept American ships carrying out naval exercises in the area. It was just last week that literally a Chinese destroyer almost hit an American destroyer, came within 45 yards.
And Eric, can you tell us a little bit more about what the vice president had to say about prayer?
Yeah, he ended his speech when he was talking about he wants the American people to pray for the relationship between the U.S. and China. He also wants the American people to also pray just for an understanding for the Chinese people so that they can be able to let their leaders know that they want peace in the area.
All right, Eric Rosales, thank you very much for your expertise. Well, how Ben Carson played a role in saving the life of the president of America's largest Christian college.
Welcome back. Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr. is revealing how a new type of surgery saved his life.
That's right. The rare procedure helped repair a hole in his heart. David Brody sat down with Falwell and brings us the story.
It started out as a normal classroom lecture at Liberty.
I'll come out and do this and work on it together.
Two doctors discussing a groundbreaking procedure called Noble Stitch, where holes in a patient's heart can be literally stitched together using a long suture catheter that enters through the groin area. The procedure, recently approved by the FDA, has been performed on less than 150 people. It includes one very notable patient.
President Falwell, you want to join us?
Falwell's condition made him a perfect candidate for the surgery, a migraine sufferer who had 2 small strokes with no clear cause. He mentioned it all to Dr. Ben Carson, who spoke at Liberty's medical school graduation back in May. The good doctor recommended the trend-setting procedure.
If Ben Carson hadn't come to speak here, I never would have found the problem. And he said, I was very fortunate I hadn't had a major stroke.
Falwell and Dr. Jim Thompson, the only man in America who currently does this type of surgery, sat down with CBN News. Falwell told about the support he received last month from a high-profile friend.
I called the president the night before the procedure, 11:30 at night. He answered his phone and told him about it. He called me a week later at 11:30 at night. He said, Jerry, I need you. You got to take care of yourself. How'd it go? And he said, now, Ben Carson told you about this? I said, yeah. He said, well, then I get credit, right? I said, yes. I said, this is my reward for supporting you.
Falwell is lucky to be alive. While we're all born with a hole in our heart, most openings eventually close on their own. For roughly 1 in 4 people, however, it never heals completely. Dr. Thompson calls it a potentially serious condition.
Anybody who has a stroke with an unidentifiable cause, who has a hole in their heart, should have their hole closed.
Dr. Thompson, technically, if nothing was done here, he's what, at a very high risk for dying of some sort of major stroke? Right?
Or just as bad, having a massive stroke and losing the function of his speech, of sight, of a side of his body.
What makes Noble Stitch unique is the absence of metal in your heart. Some patients get clots from the umbrella-like structures or can be allergic to nickel. Its inventor, Professor Tony Nobles, came up with the sewing idea at Disneyland Paris.
And I came up with the idea looking at the Euro version of the Indiana Jones ride where there were 2 loop-de-loops. Oh, there's the suture, and I saw it, and in my mind I went, okay, that's it. Invented it, and then the rest is history.
What's life been like since?
No more migraines. I was back in the gym a week later. I'm back to normal.
Not to make it an Oprah situation, but when you got introduced on stage earlier, there was a hug there. I mean, in other words, this is a man that really came to your aid.
He really did, and he and I are close to the same age. We like the same kind of music. We
70s rock.
70s rock, yes. So we played that when I was on the operating table. I was wide awake. I could feel the device coming up through my chest, and asked for a little more sedation.
Well, you like 70s rock, but not Stairway to Heaven quite yet, right?
Pink Floyd, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Falwell can thank Noble Stitch for a revival right here on Earth. David Brody, CBN News, Lynchburg, Virginia.
What a great story. And that cast of characters from Jerry Falwell Jr. to the president to Ben Carson.
To the doctor who discovered this. Is that incredible? Disneyland of all places?
I know. I was just thinking earlier, to create this from a ride in Disneyland. Wow, that's just, amazing. You couldn't make that any better.
Amazing.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.